afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Price Effectively to Boost Your Company's Growth and Profits. My name is Michelle Letman, and I'm joined today here by my colleagues Jenny and Steve, and we're really excited to introduce our guest speaker and answer any questions you have along the way. Stay tuned until the end of the webinar because we are running a special offer for attendees for the first time ever. Today, we're here to talk about pricing strategies. Pricing decisions are among the most important and impactful business decisions you can make. Most small business users use methods like cost-based pricing and end up actually underpricing their products and services. You know, Jenny and I were just talking about this the other day and about pricing and profits with a roofing company based out of North Dakota a few weeks ago. And they shared some really interesting information with us. Take a $12,000 roofing job, for example, and we're talking about roofing right now, but, you know, from what we understand, this applies to general contractors, remodelers, etc. So for this $12,000 job, this roofing company told us he's probably taking away $10 in profit, or 10% in profit, up to maybe 18% if he's lucky.
Now, I'm just going to jump in here for a second, Michelle. Sorry. Your profit level is going to be based a little bit off of what area of the country you're in. We all know that. But an 18% profit level shouldn't be if you're lucky. You should be seeing an average profit level of around 20% or a little higher. Obviously, taking into consideration material, labor, overhead costs, and any other incidentals you might occur. So after talking with this small business, we really want to have this discussion with all of you and provide some insight into a pricing strategy that might be able to help you boost your profits and actually grow your company. Before Michelle introduces our speaker, I want to mention that we are giving away a Google Home Mini to one lucky attendee at the end of the webinar.
Awesome. Today we are joined by Dholakia. Utpal's research expertise focuses on pricing, online marketing, and marketing strategy for small and medium-sized businesses. He's the author of How to Price Effectively and Guide for Managers and Entrepreneurs. Speaking of, we will have an opportunity for you to claim a free copy of this best-selling book later on in the webinar. And if you have any questions during the webinar for Utpal, you can communicate with us using the question box, which is in your webinar control panel on the right side hand of your screen. So why don't you go ahead and see if you can locate that right now and let us know where you're joining us from today. And for now, I'm going to pass it on over to Utpal. So Utpal, take it away.
Thank you very much, Jenny. So today's talk is about how to price effectively to boost your company's growth and profits. And this talk is based on about 15 years worth of research and consulting with companies across all industries. So what I would like to do today is share several really important ideas about pricing with you. How your prices drive profits and how they convey information about your quality to customers. I also want to tell you how costs are relevant for pricing decisions and which costs you should consider and which ones you should ignore. I want to explain how cost plus pricing can often be a bad thing. So we're going to look at pros and cons of cost plus pricing. Then we will look at how to understand and measure what your customers value and how to assign dollar signs to each of those valuations. Then why price points are important and the use of price point pricing strategies so that you can come up with prices which your customers really like. And then towards the end of the webinar, I will share with you a detailed description of how to conduct a value-based pricing approach to figure out what prices you should charge, and then actually get the prices you ask for. So I hope this will be informative, and I'm looking forward to a lot of questions at the end. All of this information is covered in greater detail in my book, and you're welcome to take a look at that if you like. So let's start by talking about why pricing decisions are important. Of all the decisions that managers can make, pricing decisions are the most impactful because they are some of the fewest decisions which have a direct and immediate impact on your company's revenues. Most other decisions involve spending money. Pricing decisions actually involve bringing money in. So that makes them really significant. And also making them complicated is the fact that you can quote a price or change a price very easily, and yet it's extremely risky to do it. So you have to be careful and have some structured method to do pricing. Now, I'm going to cover two important reasons, perhaps the most important reasons for the importance of pricing decisions. One, price as a driver of your company's profit and the most significant driver of your company's profit. And then prices convey information about your product and service quality. So price is more than simply the dollar value. It is also a signal about your qualities. It's what we will look at. Let's start by looking at the pricing significance of like driving your company's profit. And so if we look at the profit equation, and this equation applies to pretty much every company out there, there are really three drivers of profit for every company. The first is sales volume. So the more you sell, obviously, the more profit you're going to make. But in mature markets, like the one most of us operate in, we're not able to grow our sales volume very rapidly unless we are really, really lucky or something like that. And so that kind of limits how we can use sales volume to grow profit. The second important driver is obviously cost. Reduce costs, hold everything else constant, and you're going to make more money. But again, there are some opportunities to manage and reduce costs, especially for new businesses. But for most established businesses, it is difficult to move the needle on cost. And for many years, most of us have been trying hard to reduce costs, so there isn't much room to go down any further on this. And even more significantly, cutting costs leads to lower quality, and this can backfire if your customers rebel and go somewhere else. So that leaves a third driver, which is price. And for many companies, and this is across spectrum, so from a startup company or a company with 1 or 2 employees, all the way to mega corporations with hundreds of thousands of employees, this is a common theme, which is of sales volume, costs, and price. Price is the area of greatest opportunity to drive your company's profit. Now, let me give you a couple more pieces of evidence to make this point, which is that the greatest opportunity for growing your profit lies in pricing your products and services more effectively. Okay, so let's look at some more evidence of this concept to understand this. Let's take the example of Costco. So many of you might know that Costco has maintained its hot dog and soda price. They sell a combo of a hot dog and soda for $1.50. And they have maintained this price for 30 years, since 1987. And they sell about 100 million of these hot dog soda combos each year across all their stores. Now, if we just did a thought experiment and said, okay, can we raise the price, or can Costco raise the price of this combo by just 2 pennies, okay, just 2 cents, and still sell these 100 million combos? Chances are most people are not going to notice the 2 cent difference. And yet the operating profit of this entire company would shoot up by almost 50%. So my point is that a really small change in price can have a significant impact in your profit that you make. Now, Mackenzie did a study a few years ago looking at the largest companies in the world. And what they were looking at is all the profit levers which I just mentioned. So sales volume, costs, and then price. And they said, so they did the study where they said, okay, if we hold everything constant and change one lever and just improve that lever by 1%, how much is profit going to improve? So when they did that for fixed cost for the largest companies in the world, a profit improved by about 2.3%. They did this for sales volume, so this is for the sales, 3.3% increase in profit. They did this for variable cost. You can see the levers are becoming more and more powerful. So if you are able to lower your variable costs by just 1% and maintain sales and price, your profit goes up by about 7.8%. And perhaps no surprise here, but price is the highest number. So the idea is this: can we increase our price by 1%, hold our costs and volume constant? And if we can do that, for the largest companies, the value is 11%. And keep in mind, these are companies with pretty healthy profit margins. I think Jenny was talking about 20% profit margins. Many of these companies have 30, 35, even 40% profit margins. Now, for smaller businesses and in some industries, profit margins tend to be smaller. So the smaller your profit margin, if your profit margin is not 20% or 30%, price improvement is going to have an even greater impact. So the 11% number on this slide is probably going to be significantly higher for you. Okay, so that is something to think about. Of all the drivers, a 1% improvement in price produces the highest improvement in profit. So this is the most significant profit lever which every business should keep an eye on. Even a small increase in prices while maintaining a company's sales and cost levels generates a significant boost to its profit. Now, one of the main themes in my webinar and my book is the fact that increasing prices does not simply mean raising prices. It is a more complicated and a more kind of like a multi-level and a thoughtful process of accomplishing price increases. And you almost never want to just simply raise prices and quote a higher price. That's not how you get an increase in prices. But I will get to that a little bit later on in this afternoon's webinar. Okay, so let's change gears and look at the second reason why pricing decisions are so important. Prices convey information about product and service quality. They are a signal. They provide a signal. Let me explain this point. Let me give you an example of this. Okay, so let's say I tell you that I have a car in front of me, and this car the only thing I tell you about this car is that it costs $85,000. And just imagine what kind of car this is. Okay, what is going to come into your mind? You're going to think it's some kind of a sports car, something fancy, a luxury car. Okay. Now, on the other hand, I say, okay, let's say this car doesn't cost $85,000, but it only costs $5,000. What is the car going to look like to you? Do you think this is a $5,000 car? Probably not. You're going to think a $5,000 car is something like this, a well-used Honda Accord or something like that with 100,000 miles on it, maybe. And this is a point which we have to apply to our own businesses. Okay, so do the same kind of thought experiment and think about a bathroom remodel where a contractor has bid $7,500 for that project versus a bathroom remodel where a contractor has bid $25,000. Okay, so in all these examples, the only information I'm giving you is information about the price of the product or the service in this case. And very quickly, you're going to have very different impressions about what kind of quality these contractors are going to be able to deliver, how they operate, their experience levels, their skill levels, the satisfaction of their customers. For most of us, the $7,500 bathroom remodel is going to be drastically different from the $25,000 remodel. So my point is this: prices convey information about the products or services quality, and high prices signal that the customer is going to receive something of high quality, where the provider has put some effort, they have used their skill, they have used their competence, they have done a good job. And low prices by themselves signal mediocrity and low quality. So many business owners have this notion that if I lower my prices, my customers are going to be happier and they're going to value what I have to offer. But often what ends up happening is exactly the opposite. They tend to imagine that you're going to cut corners, you're going to be you're going to use low quality materials and so on. So this is the reason why you have to be careful with lowering prices. Here's another interesting example. So someone did this study a few years ago in the medical literature. So these were doctors and neuroscientists. So what they looked at is, what they found is, if the same individual is given the same wine to taste, okay, and they are told the wine costs either $5, and then at a different time they're told that the wine costs $45. The same wine after consumption produces more pleasure for the drinker if the drinker thinks that they are drinking the $45 wine. So in fact, high prices produce more customer satisfaction and enjoyment in this case. So this is something this is one of the core messages of my book and my research, which is this: a high price is a badge of your service's superior quality. The high price is a signifier. It conveys positive qualities that your customers value, such as reliability, innovativeness, and so on. And these types of positive qualities strengthen your brand. If you have employees, they supply pride and confidence to your employees, and your customers trust you more because of this badge, that high price. Let's be clear. So what I mean by high prices is deserved high prices. So you make high quality products and services, high prices are a strength. And when you price your high quality services and products too low, they actually are a hindrance for marketing them and for increasing your sales and profit. So you have to price according to the quality that you offer your customers and be confident enough to ask for what you deserve. And many managers and business owners actually do not do this. And there are many reasons for this. So again, I've researched talked to hundreds of managers over the years, and this is the common theme. Okay, many managers do not pay sufficient attention to pricing, and one of the reasons they do not pay sufficient attention is they find pricing to be intimidating. So they put pricing decisions on the back burner and they focus on other things. And you can think to yourself whether you fall in this category of managers who kind of like are just a little bit intimidated by me thinking about pricing issues. Point number 3, they're afraid to raise prices even when they deliver high quality to customers. And they are very willing, on point number 4, they're very willing to give deeper discounts than customers ask for or they need. Fifth big issue that I've seen over and over again is companies tend to use very simple methods like cost-based pricing or pricing below a competitor. So you'll find competitors' price and price, let's say, 5% below the competitor. So using such simple methods often leaves money on the table. And then the final concern with many business managers or owners about pricing is that they fail at price execution. So they ask for a price, but then after the negotiation is over, they end up getting a fraction of what they asked for, not getting the asking price. So here's how I want you to think about pricing decisions. Okay, pricing decisions are necessary for your company's success. They are essential. So this is something that you have to pay more attention to than pretty much anything else you do. Okay, so you have to spend significant time and effort in thinking about your pricing strategy. And again, I mean, there is a structured approach to designing your pricing strategy and coming up with prices. So you need to collect relevant data on, I've underlined all 4 pricing decision inputs. So I'm going to talk about those inputs in a second. Okay, so collect data on all these inputs and analyze it carefully. Make your pricing decisions in a structured, methodical, and consistent way. And then separate your pricing decisions from outcomes. And we will go over each of these points when I share with you next my pricing model. So how to make good pricing decisions in a structured, methodical way. Okay. So let's look first at the 4 pillars of pricing, the 4 main factors that you need to think about and have some information on where your business is concerned. Okay. So the first one is obviously cost. You have already mentioned costs once or twice. The second one is customer value. The third one is reference prices, which is what other prices is your customer using in evaluating your product or service. And then the fourth one is, what is the differentiator that you are offering your customer or your value proposition? What exactly is the main reason your customers are coming to you? That has to be an integral part of your pricing strategy. Okay, so let's go now and look at these in a little bit more detail. The 4 pricing pillars provide the 4 main inputs into making structured pricing decisions. So what I would like to do first is to share this entire structured method and then dig a little bit deeper into these pillars and explain how to use each one. And the method that I've developed is what I call the value pricing framework. And I should mention, so I've used this method over and over again with companies in many different industries, everything from technology, healthcare, home improvement, manufactured products, financial services. And so it's a method which has proven to work. So I hope you will kind of find value in it for your company as well. Okay, so in a nutshell, this slide provides a graphic of this method. Okay, so as you can see, the 4 pillars are the 4 pricing decision inputs. They lead to the pricing decisions that most companies practice, which is setting a new price or changing existing prices, which leads to price realization. And then the final part of this framework is the pricing success factors or the pricing success measures, which involve sales revenue, profit margin, customer satisfaction, and employee satisfaction. So the main point here is that if you want to price effectively, you need to take into account all the different pricing decision inputs, not just costs, and you need to balance all these different success measures on the right-hand side, not just sales revenue or growth. It's a combination of these factors which drive success of your business. Let's begin with cost. So for the next maybe 20 minutes or so, I'm going to take you through each of these inputs and give you some ideas of how to effectively use these inputs for your business. Okay, so let's begin with costs. and what role they play in the value pricing framework. So obviously, for any business to survive over the long run, you have to bring in more money than you send out. And so costs at the floor on prices, and they're often the most important input into a pricing strategy. And over the long run, they determine the lowest price level you can charge because you have to cover costs. But many managers have this misconception that cost should be the main or the only driver of the pricing decision. So most companies use only costs in making pricing decisions, something that is known as cost plus or cost-based pricing. Now, what managers do not factor in is this idea of an incremental cost, which is the fact that for any pricing decision, some of the costs are relevant and should be considered in the pricing decision, and other costs are actually non-relevant, non-incremental or irrelevant, and they should be safely ignored. And if you do not practice this idea of incremental versus non-incremental cost carefully, you are going to miss out on many opportunities to make profit. So let's look at this idea of incremental costs in a little bit more detail. Effective prices are rarely set or changed based solely on cost. However, without considering costs, prices would be like anchorless ships in the ocean because they do not allow you to reach your pricing success measures effectively. Okay, so let's look at the idea of how to use costs for effective price. First, you need to understand your costs and separate which costs matter and which costs do not matter. So the main takeaway is that some costs matter, which we call relevant, and some costs do not matter, which we call irrelevant. And what you need to do when you are determining relevant costs is to understand how the costs will change with the changes in sales that result from pricing decisions. So let me give you an example to really help you understand this point. Imagine that there is a full service restaurant, okay? And this restaurant is only open for lunch and dinner. So and now they're making a business decision and they want to consider opening for breakfast. So the question is, which cost should the operator consider when making the decision about how much money, what prices to charge for breakfast items? Okay, so the next slide, this slide shows you all the different costs that will be incurred if the restaurant serves breakfast. Kitchen staff, servers, hostesses, all of them will have to come in for the breakfast shift. The restaurant will incur utility costs, electricity, water, food costs. They are paying rent on the location, taxes, general manager's salary, all the different fixtures, tables, chairs, all the things, all the actual items in the restaurant. But the point is that all the costs on the right-hand side, rent, taxes, general manager's salary, and so on, they are incurred regardless of whether the restaurant offers breakfast or not. So for the decision of offering breakfast, all of these costs are irrelevant to the decision of offering breakfast. So they should be ignored, they're irrelevant. The only relevant costs are the costs which will be incurred because breakfast is offered. So only the costs on the left should be considered. And so what ends up happening is, for a restaurant which is already open, the cost basis of offering breakfast will be much lower than a restaurant which is a new restaurant and is open for breakfast and lunch. And so you will find that the restaurant which is starting to offer breakfast will have lower prices. And let me give you an example of this. So this is on the left-hand side is a restaurant called the Dholakia, which is upscale full-service restaurant in Houston. They were open for lunch and dinner before they started opening for breakfast. And you can see their breakfast sandwich costs around $6.50. That is what the price of the breakfast sandwich is. On the other side is Snooze Eatery, a very comparable restaurant which is open for breakfast and lunch as part of its business model. So they have to cover all their fixed costs and variable costs for breakfast. And you'll see that's why their sandwiches are priced much higher, around $10 to $11, almost twice as much. And if you go back to the Dholakia, you'll find that the breakfast menu has sandwiches which cost around $6.50, and the lunch menu is much more expensive, so around $14 for a sandwich. My point being that when the restaurant started offering breakfast, they had to cover fewer costs and only the incremental costs And so they are able to offer significantly lower prices. And the upshot, of course, is that because they offer lower prices than either their lunch prices or the competitors' breakfast prices, they're able to draw new customers into their business and actually still make profit on their breakfast service. So what did we learn from this example? Costs relevant to the pricing decision are incremental costs. Now let's consider another aspect of cost, which is also important, which is the idea of avoidable cost. So let me explain this concept of avoidable cost and how it applies to your business as well. Okay. To do this, I'm going to use the example of pricing shoes at Foot Locker, and consider this example. So Foot Locker purchases running shoes in late winter for $31 a pair, and sells them during spring and summer for about $50. But when the fall comes, people do not want to buy running shoes, so the demand dwindles. Now the store has two choices. The first choice is to sell the remaining inventory with the end of a summer sale at $29.99 per shoe per pair and then take a loss. On the other hand, they could hold the shoes in inventory until next spring and then sell for $39.99 a pair. So they would make around $8 on that, or actually $9 on that pair. Lower the price because the shoe will be an old model next year. Now the question is, which decision makes more business sense? Sell at a loss at the end of the season, or hold for a year and sell at a much higher price? And for most companies, it's going to be avoidable costs which play a big role. So Foot Locker will have costs of holding shoes in inventory, which come to around $6 a pair. They have to borrow money and insurance, so that's a cost of around $2.40. Cost of labor, space in the stockroom. All of these costs are incurred only because Foot Locker decides to store the shoes for 8 months, and so they are avoidable costs. And because these avoidable costs are significant, more than the $9 they would make if they stored the shoes, the decision to clear out the inventory at a loss makes a lot of sense, something which is driven by avoidable costs. So costs relevant to the pricing decision are avoidable costs. Those are the ones you should consider when deciding how much to price something at. And then one final issue in this Foot Locker example is this idea of cannibalization cost that also comes into play. So assume that next year you could sell a new line of shoes at $50. So if you decide to hold the current line, there will be some cannibalization, and you need to factor this cost in as well. And that cannibalization cost is an opportunity cost, which can raise the cost, the avoidable cost, even higher. So what are relevant costs? Costs that determine the profit impact of the pricing decision. Not all costs change with a price change. Those costs that do not change are irrelevant to the pricing decision. And there are two types of relevant costs. Costs that are incremental, not average. Costs that are avoidable, not sunk. And typically, if you look at all your costs, you are capturing costs which are not relevant to your pricing decision, and you are making pricing decisions which leave money on the table. Okay, so pricing decisions affect whether a company will sell less of a product at a higher price or more of the product at a lower price. Some costs remain the same in either event. That's how we identify the costs which are irrelevant to us. And some costs change from one scenario to the next. So those are the incremental costs, and those are the ones you need to consider. They parallel your fixed and variable cost distinction, but not fully. And so let me explain this a little bit more. Variable costs almost always influence the amount of business that a company does. So variable costs are always incremental for pricing decisions. Fixed costs, on the other hand, some of them like product design, advertising, and overhead are incremental when deciding whether a price will generate enough revenue to justify being in business. And incremental fixed costs are those which directly result from implementing a price change. So for example, if a restaurant offers new prices and they have to print menus, the menu cost is a fixed cost, but it still needs to be considered in your pricing decision. Similarly, if a public utility cost spends money to receive regulatory approval, that fixed cost is a incremental cost. And finally, an airline which advertises a new discount service or upgrades its interiors, to offer a premium price service. Those fixed costs are also incremental. So in a nutshell, some fixed costs are incremental, some are not to pricing decisions. And then finally, semi-fixed costs. And this, I think, is applicable when you have to hire new laborers or to rent new machines or buy new machines because you have reached your capacity. Up to the point of reaching the capacity, all the fixed costs of your employees or machines are irrelevant to the pricing decision. But once you have to hire new people or to rent new machines, those costs become relevant to making pricing decisions and whether you want to use a low price to attract additional business. Okay, I'm going to pass it over now back to Jenny to have a little bit of a break in this discussion.
Thank you, Utpal. So while Utpal takes a quick water break, I wanted to tell you about his book on the same topic, which is How to Price Effectively, a guide for managers and entrepreneurs. It introduces a set of useful and straightforward tools to implement the value pricing framework and also touches on the implications that pricing has on your profit, customer satisfaction, and brand perception, which goes to show you how pricing plays a role in your growth. We're offering a free copy of this book in exchange for joining a Surefire team member for a one-on-one call to determine the role that digital marketing will play in your business growth. The poll is now open, so please pick a time. We are scheduling appointments for Tuesday, February 27th or Thursday, March 1st of next week. We understand that you guys all have busy schedules, so if either of those days don't work for you, do not fret. Just please email me to pick a time and we will help pick out the best time that works for you. And if you're already a current customer, you can just reach out to your coach and they will be able to help you further if you have any additional questions. And while you're answering the poll, let me tell you a little bit about Surefire Local. Surefire Local multiplies your marketing efforts by helping you see and strengthen all of your online activities from a single platform, the Surefire Local Marketing Cloud. So you can finally get the kind of quality results you really want. With the Surefire Cloud, you'll be able to see more results from your digital marketing, do more marketing with the ease of accessing everything through one single login, and you will get more help from your dedicated digital marketing coach. So take another second here to give us your choice, and then we will let Utpal take it back.
Okay, perfect. So I'm back. So now what I would like to do is finish our discussion on costs and again show you some creative ways to make more money at a lower cost basis. Okay, so one important concept in really doing this is to understand the idea of a price floor. And price floors are basically of two types. And again, most managers tend to look at the long-term price floors, which is the total cost. So basically all your fixed costs, all your variable costs, and add them up. That is your total cost. And what they do is they establish a long-term price floor on your product's price. And this is the obvious common sense way to think of costs. In the long run, your prices have to cover all your fixed and variable costs. And if you do not meet this minimum threshold, you cannot survive as a successful business. But this is not the interesting part. Where pricing is concerned, the next price floor is the more interesting and impactful one. And that is the idea of an incremental cost, establishing the short-term price floor. So short-term price floors, if you can use them creatively and thoughtfully, create significant customer value to help your business grow. And again, because your cost basis is much lower, you can offer the product at a much lower price than your normal prices, yet you can maintain or increase your profit levels and help your company's financial performance. This goes back to the earlier comment I made that raising prices is not necessarily just simply increasing prices by X percentage. It's being much more creative with your overall pricing strategy. Okay, so let's look at this idea of a short-term price floor. As the breakfast and the Foot Locker examples showed, a manager who focuses on average cost instead of incremental cost would be misled into rejecting profitable growth opportunities because they would be looking at total cost and they would think that the price would be inadequate to cover the total cost. The adequacy of any price for introducing new products or targeting new segments can only be ascertained by looking at the incremental cost of sales and ignoring those costs that would be incurred anyway. Okay, so this is how we think of this metaphor of the sun. At the core of the sun is your regular customers that you are serving at regular prices. And these are typically the competitive prices that you charge, that you deserve based on the quality you offer. At the margin, creating all the fire and flash is this creative business growth activities that take advantage of incremental costs of sales of the company. Okay, so let's look at some examples to illustrate this concept a bit more. There are many creative growth activities that you can perform that take advantage of the lower incremental cost of sales. Okay, so this is an example of a Japanese restaurant here in Houston. On the left-hand side, you have the regular menu, which they start offering at around 6:30 in the evening up until 10 or 11 at night. And you look at some of the dishes on this menu. There is a dish called Walu Walu, which is priced at $16.50. Or there is a spicy crunchy tuna, which is priced at $12. On the left-hand side is the social hour menu, which is offered. It's like a happy hour menu, which is offered up until 6:30. And you can see the same items. Walu Walu here is less than half the price. It's about $8 instead of $16.50. And the spicy crunchy tuna is exactly half the price. The social hour menu is designed to take advantage of the incremental cost basis that we discussed. They are not using these prices to cover their fixed costs. The fixed cost is covered by the regular menu and all the customers who buy the Walu Walu at $16.50 and the crunchy tuna at $12. Because they have spare capacity, they are able to offer the same dishes at a much lower price during happy hour and cover their variable costs and still make money. This is exactly the point of these creative marketing activities. Another example. If you look on the 20 at 20 promotion that is done in New York for Broadway shows, 20 minutes before the time of the show, whatever empty seats are left of that show are sold for $20. Again, the idea being that for those empty seats, you would not have earned any revenue at all. So why not use a lower cost basis and fill those seats with people, even if they are paying a very much lower price than normal? Those prices are only covering the incremental cost, not the total cost. And you find that in other industries also. So the hotel tonight, you can rent a hotel room for a fraction of the price, or a cruise ship for a last minute cruise ship for, again, maybe like less than half the original price. And in both cases, I should mention, those are profitable for the hotels and the cruise ship companies. And here's an example of a retailer called Everlane. For some of the items they sell, they run promotions like this, where the customer has the choice of paying what they want. And they're given choices of whether they want to pay $47, $56, or $89 for these pants. And they're told exactly how much Everlane will earn at each of those price levels, and the customer can choose how much they want to pay for this promotion. The idea being that this is a way to bring customers to the website, get them engaged with the company's products, and have them feel like they're having fun and contributing to the company's well-being. And again, all of this is possible because of the lower cost basis. And almost every company, including yours, once you figure out who your regular customers are and what your regular business is, and how much spare capacity you have at the margin, every business can profit from pricing below the average cost. In this example, look at this Honey Nut Cheerios. General Mills sells this at $6.49, and then whatever machine capacity they have for the time that the machines and the equipment in their factories is not being used, they make Honey Nut O's for Trader Joe's, and those are priced at a fraction of Cheerios' price, exactly the same product. And there are many examples of this that I can give you. And even in the business-to-business space, so most companies have some spare capacity, and they will typically take on work for other companies at a much lower price because they do not need that price to cover the fixed cost. They only need to cover the incremental labor costs and so on. But this is still profitable because the equipment is needed for the company's primary work that they are doing. And then another example is airlines which fly weekend flights, which do not cover a proportionate share of capital costs, and yet they add incrementally to the profit. So the challenge before you is how are you going to use your cost structure and your demand that you have from your customer base to generate this type of creative pricing strategies to grow your business and make money. Okay, now let's switch gears and talk for a second about cost-based pricing. And I want to talk to you about the strengths and weaknesses of this method, because there are many misconceptions that people have. It is widely criticized. Everyone will say that cost-plus pricing is bad, yet it is most commonly used. Most restaurants use it, most manufacturers use it, and so on. The logic of cost-based pricing is simple. You want to price every product to deliver a fair price, fair return over your cost, fully and fairly allocated. And here's an example. This navigation system company supplies the US Air Force with navigational equipment. They have a contract where they simply calculate all the costs of making each unit and mark it up by 15%. So in this example, the variable cost of making one of those navigational systems is $10,000. The allocated fixed costs are $8,000. And because the contract guarantees a 15% profit, the company charges the US Air Force $20,700. But from this example, some of the benefits are obvious. Cost-based pricing is very simple. Anyone, line employees can implement it with moderate training. All you need is a calculator, really. Nothing more than that. It is easy to explain and justify. So you can explain why the price is what it is easily to employees and customers. Third point is that if all your competitors use cost-based pricing and they all have similar cost structures, then prices are going to remain stable. You will not be engaging in any price wars, and you will maintain your margins quite well. And then finally, it encourages customers to focus on quality. Because keep in mind, if all the contractors in your neighborhood, in your area are using cost-based pricing, cost prices are going to be similar, and then customers will focus on quality, who is going to do a much better job and so on in making their decision. But so even though these benefits sound good, the weaknesses are significant. Okay, so when you use cost-based pricing, it encourages inefficiency. You do not have any incentive to be efficient and to lower costs. And in fact, if you reduce your costs, you are going to make less money and less profit. So it encourages inefficiency. It ignores customer value and reference prices because you're focusing only on costs and none of the other four pillars that I mentioned before. This can be dangerous because it either results in prices that no one wants to offer you, or it can leave a lot of money on the table. It can go either way. And then finally, it creates a false sense of complacency. So a manager may think that because they are using cost-based pricing, they cannot lose money, which is wrong. Let me explain why that is wrong. In most companies, it is impossible to determine a product's unit cost before you determine its price. And the reason for this is that unit costs are dependent on volume. You cannot forecast accurately how much you are going to sell in any given year. So you cannot predict your costs because of that. If you sell more than you expected, your unit costs will be lower and you will leave money on the table. On the other hand, if you sell less than you expected, your unit costs will be higher and you will charge too much and your customers will not buy, so you will lose money. Price affects sales volume, and then sales volume affects costs. And this point is completely ignored by cost-based pricing. And in strong markets, if you have a lot of demand, like in Houston a few months ago when we had Hurricane Harvey, for example, cost-based price serves as a cap on price if it can be easily achieved, because everyone wanted a home improvement contractor at that time at the end of August and in September. But here, taking the example of Toyota Prius, when it was first launched back soon after that in 2004, everyone wanted a Toyota Prius, but Toyota was basically using a cost-based pricing, and so they kept the manufacturer's price at around $19,995, and the real profit was made by dealers who were charging premiums of $6,000 to $8,000 because the demand was so high. So you have to be careful not to leave money on the table when you use cost-based pricing. So it leads to overpricing in weak markets and underpricing in strong ones. But the most important weakness is that it still does not provide a guarantee of covering fixed costs because the underlying logic is flawed. And most importantly, you can do much better with other pricing strategies. Okay, so this was an overview of costs, a 15-minute discussion of costs. Go a lot more detail on this issue because it is an important one. But I would like to move on to the next pillar in my pricing framework, which is customer value. So customer value represents the total amount of money that the customer is willing to pay for the benefits they receive. And most managers tend to focus on functional value of the customer, which is the main reason why the customer purchased the product. But there's a second category of values called hedonic values, or the emotional benefits. And customers are often willing to pay a lot of money for that. And together, these two values, functional and hedonic, they make the total customer valuation of the product or service. And in our pricing calculations, customer value usually sets the ceiling or the highest possible price that can be charged for the product. Now let's look a little bit at these functional and hedonic benefits. So the functional benefits stem from the product's core purpose. So this is an example of a hotel room from my book. And a hotel room provides a safe place to stay, a quiet and comfortable environment, saves time, saves money. And all of these functional benefits are usually related to the cost that you incur to provide the product or service. And so they tend to be considered quite nicely by managers when making pricing decisions. On the other hand, hedonic benefits are the intangible benefits that often produce an emotional response. So let's say that in the home improvement example, if you have remodeled someone's bathroom and they walk in for the first time after the project is complete and they just feel very, very happy at the quality of the work you have done, that is a hedonic benefit. Sense of pride, anxiety, fun, assurance. And these are the emotional responses that customers have. And in many cases, they cost very little to provide and to generate from the customer. Yet customers may be willing to pay a lot for these benefits, especially if they are assured that they're going to get some of these emotional benefits. And managers often tend to ignore them when making pricing decisions. So this is a big opportunity that you have to come up with effective pricing strategies. So let me explain very quickly one method to actually use customer value to in your pricing decisions, and that is to come up with this customer value grid. Now, this is a survey-based method that I've used many times in the past, and the way it works is like this. In the step one, you take your product or your service and you unbundle it into its different features. In the second step, you understand all the different functional and hedonic benefits that the customer is deriving from each product feature. Then you ask the customer to quantify the benefits in economic terms. That is how much they are willing to pay for each benefit. And then in the last step, you add the economic value of these benefits to calculate the total economic value. Let me show you how this works with one example. Okay, so this is again an example of a hotel room. So you have a hotel room, which is a bundle of features made up of a bed. Let's say that it might have a memory gel mattress, an electronic door lock, 24-hour room service, and so on. Each of those features provide functional and hedonic benefits. So for example, the bed with memory gel mattress might provide restful sleep. The electronic door lock and with bolt might provide security, and so on. And finally, each of those have an economic value. The restful sleep might be worth $45 for a particular customer, security $40, and so on. So you add all these things up and come up with the final customer value for a hotel room as a whole. Another important property of customer value is that it is not stable. It changes in predictable ways, and that should guide how you make your pricing decisions. And let me give you an example to illustrate this. Understanding when customer value increases and the triggers of value increase provides useful information in making effective pricing decisions. So the example I have is demand for chocolate. And if we think of how demand changes, there are some predictable properties of demand, which is for Valentine's Day, for Easter, and so on. More people are going to buy chocolate, and at other times, in between, the demand is going to be much less. Once the business has figured this out, you can also make some decisions on when it makes sense to charge high prices and when it makes sense to offer discounts. So for example, would make a lot of sense to offer coupons and demand has dropped off after Valentine's Day or Easter, and charge high prices or full prices before Valentine's Day and Easter. Now, the same concept can be applied to your business once you know how customers' valuation of your service or your product changes. So for example, at certain times in the year, let's say right after New Year or just after summer, more customers might be interested in home improvement services, and that might give you chances to charge high or full prices. The key insight here is that you want to manage your price levels so that they coincide with predictable shifts in customer value. Identify your customer value triggers and minimize incentives during periods of high value. Okay, moving on. So let's talk a little bit about reference prices. And now I want to come to some of the more important punchlines that you can use right away to improve your business and the pricing of your the profitability of your business. So looking at reference prices, customers rarely make purchase decisions or evaluate prices in isolation. They are always comparing your price to your competitor's price or to some other reference prices. And it is very important to know what those prices are. So commonly used reference prices might include competitors' prices, your company's historical prices, or other prices that the customer may encounter before purchase. Reference prices play two roles in pricing. First, they provide the range of prices that customers consider to be reasonable. And this is a third independent data point for your pricing decision. Once the range of reasonable prices is well understood, you can strategically decide where you want to price your products in relation to this range. And the second function of a reference price is you can influence which reference prices customers use and how they interpret them. So this picture illustrates this idea of a range, which is there is a reference point and then there is a range around it where customers believe that the price is the usual or the normal price. But once you go outside that range, if you go on the high side, customers start thinking you are too expensive. And if you go too low, then they start worrying that you are too cheap and you might not offer something of quality. So reference prices are of two types, and I'll briefly mention this, which is all the prices which are available to the customer before and at the point of purchase. Those are something we call external reference prices. They could be advertised prices, they could be prices of adjacent items on the shelf tags. And the other category of reference prices is internal prices, which is based on what the customer knows from their prior knowledge. So these would be prices encountered during recent shopping trips, once they remember, and so on. The brand is frequently discounted, consumers tend to lower their internal reference price. But the main point is that customers use and combine external and internal price information to decide whether you're offering a good deal or not. And so you have some flexibility in offering a price. You do not have to be completely precise. Moving on, what is a price point? It's a particular reference price that is so well known and well accepted that the customer considers it to be a normal price. So for the longest time, for the last 20 years, a good computer is supposed to cost around $1,000. Many of us have a reference price of around $5 for lunch, or $1 a day for news or coffee or shaving, $400 for a car payment. Price points tend to be segment specific, and there can be several significant price points within the category. And a price point has positive value for the customer, for the shopper. So here's an example of lunch price point. The $5 lunch price point means that all the different companies offer lunch combos or lunch choices at $5. And typically, when you have a price point in your industry, that is the opportunity to where customers really prefer you to offer something to them at that particular price point. As this example shows, more customers buy at the 60-cent price than the 53-cent price, because that 60 cent is a price point for the customer. If you know which price points your customers favor, you can design product and service bundles that are specifically targeted at that price point and allow you to earn a high profit margin. And again, for these price point based bundles, it will be easy for you to market them. So you have to figure out let's say for a bathroom remodel or a kitchen remodel, what the appropriate price point for your target segment is. And that would be a really good price to charge and design products and services around that price point. Now that we have covered, I'm reaching the last stage of my webinar for today, but this is the important stage because it gets at the heart of my pricing approach, which is value-based pricing. And this is a really important and useful pricing method, which is using both customer value and reference prices in pricing decisions. So this is the most natural way to price because it reflects negotiated sharing of the value between buyer and seller. And it is really nothing more than basing your product's offering price based on how much your target customer values the product. So how does this method work? It is a method by which the company tries to calculate and earn the differentiated economic value of a product for a particular customer. So now I need to explain what differentiated economic value means and how you can apply it for your business. It has 6 steps, and I'll go through each of these steps in more detail. The first step is identify. So let's use an example to illustrate this. Okay, listing a vacation rental home. Let's say you have a vacation rental home on a beach and you want to rent it on Airbnb by the week, and you're trying to figure out how much you should charge for the weekly rent on this beach rental house. Step number 1 is you identify the target customer. So obviously in this case you have vacationers or Airbnb users. In the second step, you identify the competitive offers and the focal, your main competitor. So in this particular case, this is your house and your neighbor's house might be the focal rental, because anyone wanting to rent a house is going to look at the prices of both houses before deciding which one they want. So their listing price is the starting point in this example. Step number 3 is to conduct a head-to-head comparison between your product and your competitor's product. So you have to collect information on all the features of your beach house and the neighboring house. In this example, pretty much everything is the same except that you have a pool, your house has a pool, and your neighbor's house does not have a pool. Bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen, everything else is the same. So now what you have to do is you have to decide what the economic value of your differentiator, the pool in this case, is. And in this case, in this example, it turns out that the vacationer will pay a 20% premium on the weekly rental for the pool. So it turns out that your neighbor is charging $750, which is the reference value for your price. And this includes all the features that are common to your house and your neighbor's house, and a 20% premium, which is $150 more for the pool. So that leads to a $900 positive differentiation value. So with the value pricing method, the $900 is the maximum price that you can charge for a week's rental in this particular example of this beach house. But there's one more step. So after you have calculated this price, you have to do some kind of reality check, which is your neighbor's price realistic? Can you make more money? Can you make money at this price? Can you at least cover your variable costs? And it might turn out that when you do all these reality checks, you are not able to charge $900, even though that is what the customers really value it at, but you end up somewhere in between. So you share some of that value with your customer. So assuming that you share half of that value of $150, the customer ends up paying you $825 for renting your house. So this is the differentiated economic value concept that drives value-based pricing. Now, having discussed these pillars of pricing and the decision inputs, I want to conclude our seminar by talking about price execution and the importance of price execution. Price execution reflects the gap between prices that companies ask for and what they actually get. So it is one thing for you to quote some price, but the real value, the real benefit is when you actually receive payment for whatever you have quoted. And the problem is that we often end up with a gap. So the gaps can arise, for example, from a quantity discount. You might have to offer some free products, free shipping in some cases, advertising, or simply from your customer negotiating your quoted price lower. But the point is that every incentive you offer adds to the gap between the asked for price and the earned price, and it negatively impacts your profit. So here's an example, again, from a Mackenzie study. So if you look at the list, this is a product which has a list price of $28.40. But this manufacturer has to offer its customers some dealer discounts, order size discounts. And by the time they offer the discounts on the invoice, the price they're earning has gone down to $21.16. Then they offer still other incentives like cash discounts, advertising, freight, volume rebate, and so on. And the actual realized price for something which was listed at $28.40 is about 36% lower, or if they are actually earning only about $18.18. So the main takeaway here is that you might have significant price realization gaps in your company. And in some companies I've worked with, such gaps can be easily 50% or more. In other words, the company is realizing less than half of its average asking price. And in such cases, if you improve your price realization by even a small amount, you can result in significant profit improvement without changing asking prices. So finally, how do you improve price realization? And this is where my comment from earlier comes into play, which is you can raise prices without actually raising prices. And one way to do this is to stop giving blanket discounts to all customers. Instead, offer targeted discounts only to customers who deserve your incentive. Offer shallower discounts instead of deep ones. And many times people do not think about why they are offering 20%. And so why give a 20% if customers are okay with 10%? Cutting out free services such as free shipping, complimentary training, and charging for them gradually. So when you cut something that you are offering for free out of your product or service, that is equivalent to a price increase. So you have not raised your prices, but you have increased your price realization. A fourth way is to use a la carte pricing, which is to charge for each service separately instead of charging bundle prices. And typically, you're going to result in a price increase. And then finally, reward your sales people who are stingy with offering incentives to close the deal. These are just some examples. And there's a longer list that you can think of how to improve price realization that will apply specifically to your business. So I've come to the end. I tried to go through some of the important parts of my value pricing framework. And underlying that framework is this philosophy, which is low prices and high profits rarely go together. So if you want to price effectively, you have to charge prices that you deserve. And that typically involves pricing after understanding all the inputs carefully and combining them with some careful thinking and structured decision making. All of the information discussed in today's webinar is explained in greater detail in my book, and it covers a lot more ideas to improve your profitability.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Upal. That was very informative. So before we announce the Google Home Mini winner, I wanted to offer everyone one more opportunity to get a free copy of Professor Dholakia's best-selling book, How to Price Effectively, in exchange for a brief conversation about your digital marketing. Upal talked today about how pricing strategies play an important role in your company's growth. So does your marketing strategy, and we'd love the opportunity to learn about your digital marketing and also give you some ideas of how to make your marketing work a little harder. So please take a quick second to answer the poll. So we're scheduling calls for a one-on-one call next week. We're scheduling for Tuesday, February 27th and Thursday, March 1st. If neither of these dates work for you, please let us know. We'll follow up with you through email. I know we have some customers here today. It's really great to see you online. Feel free to reach out to your coach here at Surefire at any time. It's a great opportunity for you to take the information Upal has shared today to the next level and continue the conversation on how to maintain a digital marketing strategy that'll help fuel your growth. Unfortunately, Upal, we don't have any time for questions today. We did get a couple good ones come in, so I'm going to get some answers from you offline, and I will follow up with everyone individually on answers to their questions. So as I mentioned earlier, we are running a special offer today for our webinar attendees. That offer is on the screen, but also if you sign up for our marketing packages before the end of the month, we'll waive $1,000 off the setup fee. Just text special offer, all one word, to 44222, and a member of our team will be in touch with more details. Now, on to the Google Home Mini winner. Today's lucky recipient is Mike Beard. Congratulations, Mike. Please email marketing@surefirelocal.com with your full mailing address, and we'll ship that right out to you. Another huge thanks to Upal Dholakia and to all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. We hope you learned something new and look forward to seeing you on more upcoming webinars. Exciting news, next week we have another brand new speaker. Tim Berry, the founder and chairman of the business planning software company Palo Alto Software, will be here next Tuesday to talk about his streamlined business planning method to steer your home improvement contracting business in the right direction. You can find more information on this webinar at surefirelocal.com. Please take a minute to fill out the survey at the end and let us know how we did today and what topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We love checking out the topics you suggest when we plan our webinar schedule. Thank you and have a great evening.